The stage lights of America's Got Talent shimmered as the audience buzzed with curiosity. When the performer stepped onto the stage, he didn't look like someone about to rewrite the limits of human ability. Calm, focused, almost quiet, he greeted the judges with a humble smile. Yet behind that calm was a burning determination. Episode 1 began with the judges asking the usual questions, and he explained that his act was about climbing, literally and metaphorically. Many smiled politely, unsure of what was coming next. The music began softly, and a tall structure stood at the center of the stage, stretching higher than most acts dared to go. As he started his ascent, the audience leaned forward. At first, it looked controlled and measured. He climbed steadily, hand over hand, each movement precise. The judges watched carefully, offering cautious expressions. Simon leaned back, arms crossed, while Sofia's eyes followed every step. The performer's breathing remained calm, even as the height increased. The crowd could feel the tension building, like a held breath waiting to be released. Halfway up, the music intensified. The climb became faster, more daring. There were moments where he paused, balanced on a narrow hold, then continued upward without hesitation. Gasps echoed through the theater. You could sense that this was no longer just a performance, it was a test of courage. By the time he reached a height that made even the camera operators nervous, the judges began to react more openly. Heidi covered her mouth. Simon leaned forward now, no longer relaxed. The act ended with him letting go with one hand, hanging high above the stage, the lights flashing dramatically as the audience erupted in applause. Episode 2 picked up with the judges still processing what they had seen. The performer returned, this time promising to go even higher. The structure was extended, taller and more intimidating. Before he began, he closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. The silence in the theater was heavy. When the music started again, it was darker, more intense, matching the risk ahead. He climbed higher than before, surpassing the previous limit with confidence that bordered on fearlessness. Every step seemed to challenge gravity itself. The audience screamed as he reached heights rarely seen on the AGT stage. The judges' faces shifted from excitement to real concern. At one point, he slipped slightly, recovering in a split second, but that moment sent shockwaves through the crowd. Sofia shouted, unable to contain herself. Heidi stood up from her seat, hands trembling. As he neared the top, the tension became unbearable. The music slowed, stretching each second. He stood on a tiny platform, far above the stage, arms spread wide. Then, without warning, he began to climb even higher, using only minimal support. That's when the judges screamed, begging him to be careful, some even telling him to stop. The audience was on its feet now, a mix of fear and awe filling the room. The act ended with him reaching the highest point, holding his position as the lights dimmed and the music cut to silence. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the theater exploded with cheers. The judges were visibly shaken, praising his bravery and control. It wasn't just a stunt. It was a moment that reminded everyone how far passion and courage can push a human being. Episode 3 opened with the performer returning to the America's Got Talent stage as someone no longer unknown. The audience already knew what he was capable of, and that knowledge made the atmosphere heavier with anticipation. As he stepped out, the applause was louder, mixed with nervous laughter. The judges welcomed him back, half smiling but clearly uneasy. He spoke briefly about pushing limits and trusting discipline over fear. The structure behind him was redesigned once again, taller, thinner, and far more intimidating than before. Even before he touched it, you could feel the danger in the air. The music began slowly, almost quietly, and he started his climb with deliberate control. This time, every movement felt more serious, as if one mistake could change everything. The cameras zoomed in on his hands gripping narrow supports, on his feet balancing on points barely wide enough to stand. The audience watched in near silence, broken only by gasps when he made sharp transitions. As he climbed higher, the stage below seemed to shrink, making the height feel endless. Simon shook his head repeatedly, whispering to himself, while Sofia watched through her fingers, unable to look directly for long. Midway through the act, he introduced something new. He removed a safety element, choosing to rely entirely on strength and balance. The crowd reacted instantly, shouting and screaming. The judges stood up almost in unison. Heidi's voice cracked as she pleaded for him to slow down. Yet he continued, focused, breathing steadily, as if the noise around him no longer existed. When he reached the top, he paused, standing perfectly still, letting the fear settle in before making his final move. The act ended with him leaning outward, his body suspended in space, holding the position far longer than anyone expected. The moment he returned safely, the entire theater exploded with applause, relief washing over everyone. Episode 4 raised the stakes to their absolute limit. From the moment he walked out, there was a sense that this performance would be different. He didn't smile much this time. His face showed respect for the danger ahead. The judges looked genuinely worried, and even the audience seemed quieter, as if bracing themselves. The structure now reached close to the highest point allowed in the theater. The lighting was darker, more dramatic, casting long shadows that made the height feel even more extreme. As the music started, he climbed faster than ever before. There was no warming up, no slow build. He went straight into the most dangerous part of the ascent. Each movement was sharp and confident, but the margin for error was razor thin. Halfway up, he stopped suddenly, balanced on a single support. The silence was so intense you could hear people holding their breath. Then, in a shocking moment, he released both hands and relied entirely on his lower body for balance. The judges screamed, some turning away, others shouting his name in panic. He regained his grip and continued upward, higher than he had ever gone before. The audience was on its feet now, torn between fear and amazement. At the peak, he stood taller than anyone thought possible, arms extended, looking down at the judges and the crowd below. For a few seconds, time seemed to stop. Then he began his descent, controlled and steady, proving that his mastery was complete. When his feet finally touched the stage, the reaction was overwhelming. The judges rushed to their feet, applauding and shouting in disbelief. They praised not just his courage, but his discipline, control, and respect for the craft. It was a performance that crossed the line between entertainment and raw human bravery, leaving a lasting mark on everyone who witnessed it.